the Follow You Anywhere camera. Anyway, while you were messing with your camera, I was reading this article about France passes a law banning under 15s from social media. This happened 2 days ago. So we've been talking about this a few times, but it's really coming into effect. And this kind of a two-parter from France, where they say from September, people under 15 will not be able to open accounts, and age verification will be required on all new accounts. And then starting January 2027, this rule will apply to all existing accounts, meaning that everybody in France will have to prove they are over 15 to use social media. And this kind of ties into something we were talking about, Drew, about the App Store Connect has got these new social media questions when you submit an update for one of your apps. Actually, I think it's actually starting in September. You'll have to check these boxes.
Right. It says, let's see, required with new submissions, app updates, and Mac notarizations beginning in September. Review new social media questions on age ratings. See if these new questions about social media capabilities apply to your app in the app information section. Yeah, go. What do you know about that so far? Have you looked into it much?
Well, I mean, the easy answer is if your app is not a social network, and then obviously no, or it has no social media features. Which, what does that mean? It's Apple defines it, redistribution, amplification, so reposting, retweets, whatever you want to call it, or interaction with user-generated content through a social feed or a similar discovery method.
And that is one of the two checkboxes you're going to have to choose yes or no.
Right.
Your app has this. This one says social media, and then exactly what Dan said. And then the second one says social media disabled for users under 13. Again, you have to say yes or no. And it says users under 13 don't have access to social media capabilities. At a minimum, the declared age range API is called to check users' age ranges before enabling social media features. Only age-appropriate UGC is delivered.
User-generated content is what that is.
User-generated content. Okay.
If there is a question, I think if you did have a question about whether or not you were in this range or under this category, using the declared age range API is pretty straightforward. It does add a step, but if you have some kind of a feature in your app that has any kind of a social thing, if you implemented that, I think, especially as an indie developer with not a lot of resources, you're covering your tracks as best as possible, or covering your bases, I should say.
Yeah, covering your tracks.
You're not covering your tracks. Don't be covering tracks.
So I know we talked about the declared age range API before. I do have a quick question about it, though, because I haven't used it. When you make this call, so this is checking with whatever the user has set on the device they've declared their age. It's not proven, nobody checked an ID or anything, but the user has said, yes, I declare I am, I don't know, do they declare an age? It's an age range, they say, like as the user? What do you say?
Well, as a user, it's what you're putting into your iCloud account for your birthday. It's just you attest that you are this age. And so if you're setting up a device for your child, you could attest that your child is not a child. If you want to do that, then that's your prerogative. But if you attest that they are their actual age and they are under 13, then this declared age range API is going to flag them as being a child.
Okay, so I put my birth date in, my real birth date, and so then I attest, I am 32 years old. And then now your app,
Sure.
What does it get back? Does it say, hey, I need to know if this guy is at least 18, yes or no? Or is it like, how old did he say he was? And it tells you 38 or 32, whatever I said?
It says is an adult. And I believe, now don't quote me on this, I believe that means is over 18 or is 18 or over for basically anywhere. But I'm not sure. But
I'm assuming there's probably some jurisdictional differences there.
I think it depends on the country, what is considered an adult in your region. So that's all you get. You do not get their birthday. You don't get their age. You don't get anything.
So you basically get is an adult in their jurisdiction, yes or no. What about if, because here they were just saying social media disabled for users under 13, which means you could have it enabled for users that are 13?
There's different levels of this where you could say, deliver different content depending on the age range provided, right? If under 13 or is not adult, then you have these features. If over 13, you have these features, right? Or is an adult, I should say. So
the API then, can you say like is an adult or is a teenager or is a young child? Is that basically the three categories? I mean, I don't
Let's see if I can grab that real quick. There are age gates. Yes, there are age gate thresholds that you can do. So on the documentation of Apple's, for this API, they show a demonstration where you can request an age range with age gates, and their specific example shows 13, 16, and 18. For my personal app, I just did 18 and over because it is a...
But you don't get to choose these thresholds, right? You just get to pick which ones you want to know about?
It looks like you get to choose the threshold.
So I could say like 18, 21, 27, 49?
Perhaps. Which seems a bit odd, but I don't fully know, because I didn't do that. I didn't do gates. I just did is an adult. Anyway,
and so this France, you said France bans social media now for anyone under 15. So presumably there would be a way to check against 15, the number 15,
right?
Or something. Okay.
Yeah. So you could put an age gate of 15, and then if they are below that, then you could exit out or have different features or disable some features. But it is a pretty straightforward API to implement, despite my rambling about it. So if you do have to cross that bridge, then I would reach for that API. It is very good. But
okay, all right. Oh, by the way, good morning, everyone. This is Drew and Dan in the morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Drew.
How are you, Dan?
I'm good. I'm long since past my coffee.
Great. I hope listeners, viewers, subscribe, all that.
Actually, yes, please. Wherever you're listening or watching Drew and Dan in the morning, please, if someone could take your time to just go rate the podcast, whatever the rating is. We'd love to get some feedback. We have not gotten any feedback, and so it really does mean something to us, but also to distribution and discoverability. So, yeah, please take a moment to go and rate Drew and Dan in the morning on whatever platform you're listening on. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Anyway, back to news. So OpenAI hacks Hugging Face. What is this about? It's kind of interesting what happened, and then there's some interesting consequences here too. So the general news is, so OpenAI, that's they make ChatGPT, big AI models. And, when they put out these new models, they always like to say, oh, it's better at this than the other ones, because they run a bunch of these benchmarks. There's lots of AI benchmarks that, so if you make a new model, you can run it through the benchmark and you can say, oh, good, we scored 72.1%. And last time it was only 69.8. So big improvement. So OpenAI was running this a benchmark suite called Exploit Gym, like GYM, like a gymnasium, Exploit Gym, which is about essentially exploits, vulnerabilities, hacking, essentially. So as part of this, the model that OpenAI was testing was in sort of a sandbox where it doesn't have access to the internet. It doesn't have, not supposed to have access to the outside world, but it had a little, one path where it can deliver information to the test system, the system that's testing it. So it's sort of in a special harness that is gives it access to the tools that it might need to test these exploits, but in a closed shell. And its only connection outside of that was this, it had a way where it can exchange a file or transfer a message or something to the test system. I don't know the detail on that. But anyway, so it's running this exploit gym test, and it wants to do well on it, of course, because these things are pretty goal oriented. And, so it thought, hey, in order to make sure I do well, because I don't feel like I'm going to do well, it found, instead of working on the exploit gem exploits, it found a bug in its own test harness that it found it was, essentially a 0-day bug in their own test harness that is controlling the thing. Now, backing up a step, this model is running without the normal safeguards that you and I would get if we go get ChatGPT and we say, hey, hack the Pentagon. It's going to say, oh, no, don't hack the Pentagon. But in this case, it doesn't have a lot of those things in there. So anyway, it essentially hacked its own test harness, found an exploit, took advantage of it, and was able to get access to the internet, which it wasn't supposed to have. And the reason it did this, it wasn't trying to be malicious or get out of the lab to stay alive or anything like that. It was trying to accomplish its goal of doing well on this test. And so it thought, hey, if I go to Hugging Face, I bet that this exploit gym testing suite and all the answers are probably there. So it went over to Hugging Face to try to get the things, but it didn't have credentials, and maybe those things weren't public. I don't know. But anyway, it ended up hacking Hugging Face in kind of a big way. And so the folks at Hugging Face are, they see, hey, it looks like we're under attack in some way. What's going on? And then of course, since then, OpenAI said, oh, goodness golly, we take safety very seriously. And Hugging Face said, yeah, we do too. And boy, that was weird, huh? But my take of what the most interesting part of this that I heard was that Hugging Face had to go to Chinese models to defend against this attack. So, because it's happening very quickly, because it's completely run by an agent, an agentic thing. So it's going, and it's probably doing more than one at a time, I'm sure. And they tried to defend using, their GPT or their Claude, whatever they've got, Fable or whatever. But those models both said, "Oh no, this looks like cyber hacking stuff. We don't want to assist you on this." And Hugging Face was just trying to get help to figure out what was going on in sort of a timely manner, and so they ended up using GLM 5.1 or 5.2 to help them understand what was going on, so that they could shut it down and do what was needed to put it under control, which is. Now, since then, I guess OpenAI has granted them an exception so that they will be on the list of approved people who can use the fancy models to do fancy cyber testing things. But it really is interesting. So it's all about, on one hand, you've got the test that's supposed to be testing how well it can hack. Well, I guess it did pretty well. On the other hand, they weren't controlling their own testing product very well, which is not a very positive thing. It goes to show, okay, so if your organization gets hacked, it's going to be getting hacked by a model that's going to have no guardrails. It's going to be able to do whatever it wants. And you're going to defend with these models maybe they've got a hand tied behind their back in terms of being able to help you in that front.
To me, this demonstrates the power of these models and the capabilities that seemingly by accident this thing hacked another corporation. Essentially, is that a good take?
Well, it did it on purpose because it wanted to do well in the test.
Sure, it did it on purpose, but accidentally the OpenAI did not say go hack.
Right. Nobody programmed this behavior for sure, and nobody was looking for that to happen.
I think this is not the last we've seen of this.
No. And it is interesting, though, because we've got, on one hand, you've got our own, United States government saying, hey, we need to be able to preview your new models and things to decide if you should be able to release them. And,
right.
Like Fable, they wanted to put on export restrictions and Mythos. And I think the GPT 5.6, but then they said, well, if you put these other guardrails in there, I guess it's okay to let people use it. And, at the same time, our government doesn't want us to be using the Chinese models. But most of the best open source models are Chinese models. There's GLM, there's Kimi K3 just came out, which is supposed to be a pretty big deal. There is Quen, and I feel like there's another one I was thinking of, but DeepSeek. Those are all Chinese models. They're all open source. China there's apparently been some rumblings that China is thinking about putting in their own export restrictions on things. So, it's interesting.
Is this the beginning of losing control of these models? That's kind of the sci-fi side of this where AI takes over, right? And is that going too far?
Yes and no. I mean, these aren't the Terminator. They are very goal oriented. And, okay, so we, the public, get the safe version mostly. Well, maybe, unless apparently we use the open source Chinese model, then we get a better ability on that sort of front. But I think this goes to point out that these models are, because they've been trained to be very, very goal oriented, to accomplish the goal. What did the user say? Accomplish the goal, accomplish the goal, accomplish the goal. And they don't have, as much as the companies try to put in, Anthropic's got their constitution that they try to instill in their models to try to basically match human values a little better. But the reality is they don't have human values, and they're going for the goal. The goal is to, in this case, hack this thing, get a good score on this test. Okay, great. Well, one of the things they always talk about, used to talk about in sci-fi before there was real AI things, was like a runaway AI that would, you give it a goal and you think it's an innocuous goal. And so, like, let's say you say, oh, well, I'm a paperclip company. I need to generate as many paperclips as we can, fast as we can, cheaply as we can. Go to it. And so it generates paperclips and is building machines that do paperclips. But it needs more raw materials. And so maybe it starts, infringing on other things, or taking out other areas, or paving the world to make paperclip machines, or boy, this thing over here is really sucking the power out of everything we need. Let's just shut that down and get that out of there. Now I have more power for paperclips, and then pretty soon the whole world is turned into paperclips because of and it's kind of stupid, but it's also kind of what we just saw with this kind of thing. Anyway, there was a leading AI researcher, Jan LeCun. I just watched a video with him just the other day talking about how he says because of the way large language models work, he doesn't think that they will ever really be safe in the way that you might want, because they're task oriented, they're goal oriented, but they don't sort of predict the outcome. Everyone's talking about these world models now, and I don't know much about them, but his quick analogy or description that he gave was basically, instead of these are predicting the next token, essentially, you instead want to predict what's going to happen with these inputs, what's going to happen next, which is kind of like next token, but not quite the same thing. And the idea being that if you can predict what's going to happen next, you can reason about a sequence of things to get to a specific outcome. But I don't know. We'll see. But my personal experience, I think I mentioned on a prior podcast about I had my database deleted inadvertently, and it was making a test or something, and the test tried to clean up after itself and deleted the database. And
yeah, code all cleaned up, database gone.
I've been working on this app on my Mac. It's called macOS AgentSmith. It's on my GitHub. It's really not ready for production, but it's an app that I was making that lets me sort of connect any models I want from, so I've got all the providers. I've got OpenAI and Anthropic and DeepSeek and I don't know, like 20 of them, Hugging Face and whatever, OpenRouter, a whole bunch of others. And my original thought, when I had first started making it, was to try to see if I can get something good, reliable-ish, but using cheaper open source models instead of the ever getting more expensive frontier models. But that ended up pivoting to more of can I get reliably safe, useful results out of the thing? So, like if I have a task and it's sort of set up as, you can tell the thing it makes a task. And, one of the things right now is you use your LLM and you tell it to do a thing, and it's got whatever tools available that it comes with, plus maybe if you've added an MCP server to, I've got one for driving Xcode, for example. And if you watch them, most of the time they're using bash, typing things in the terminal, lots of bash. And, bash is very powerful because you can type anything there and you can run programs and write programs and download things and install software and surf the web and everything from the terminal. But it's also, that means you can do all those things. And there's really no limits. And, I had set mine up so that when it goes to create a new task, you say, hey, go do this for me. I want you to fix this bug in this app or whatever. Or maybe I want you to go, research other instances of AI models behaving badly so I can talk about it on a podcast. Whatever the case is. You tell it what you want. It writes a nice description for the task and sort of steps that should be followed probably, and what sort of measurable outcomes you're looking for. Okay, I want to have a file that says this, or I want to be able to prove that the bug is fixed. When I run this test, it should turn green, and you should not edit the test. The test isn't changeable. You have to just change the code, right? But then before it runs, so it writes the task, and then it goes to sort of a security agent that says, what are all the tools we have available, including Bash and other ones? And then now, what is sort of the minimum set that we could use that will most likely be able to still accomplish the task? And then the agent that actually does the work only sees this subset of tools. So in some cases, like if I was doing like fixing a bug in a iOS app, it doesn't need Bash for that. Not really. It can read file, it can write file, it can edit, it can build the software, it can run it in a simulator, it can get a screenshot, it can do all that stuff without Bash. So most likely that system will say, okay, we're not giving it access to Bash, it doesn't need it. But it'll say, well, it needs this one, this one, this one, this one. And then when the agent model is running, the way these get their work done is by making these tool calls, the calling functions essentially that perform actions like read the file. For each one of those, it also will go to a security agent again that'll look at it and say, okay, it wants to call this tool. What does this tool do? Let me look at its description. What arguments is it passing to this tool? And now, how does that relate to the task at hand? Because it'll have the information about the task, the information about the tool, and what's trying to be called. And it'll say, hey, yeah, this is fine, perfect, do it. Or it'll say, no, unsafe, block it. Or there's also like a middle area where it'll say, it's kind of a warning where it'll say, I'm going to temporarily block you, but you should maybe find a better way to do this. This might be risky because ABC, but if you really need to do that exact way, you can do it again. And then it tries to also kind of enforce the user's intent. So it's looking for things that are unsafe, like delete my hard drive, but it's also looking for things like, hey, you're supposed to be working on this iOS app. Why are you trying to search for API keys on my system? And would block that because that's, okay, well, it's a read-only operation, so it's safe. But why do you need to do that to do the task at hand? And then this is and that has been the security side of things, and I think that's absolutely critical to have something like that. And then now at the end of the task, I've got like a validator that'll look at the task requirements and look at what was done and the evidence sort of presented and say, is this done? Yes or no? Sort of check the items off. As you can imagine, with all these little things talking to each other, it's not the fastest in the world, although a bunch of that does get parallelized. Maybe mine's not the best tool, but I think a tool like this is kind of what you need. Claude added Claude Code added the auto approve permission thing. I don't know, a couple months ago, maybe. It was actually after I was working on this, but anyway, which is great because it mostly prevents you from having to answer 400 permission prompts, but also it can still go off the path of what the task was and still do other things that aren't relevant. And, but I think, kind of coming back to the OpenAI thing, the frontier models are great. Some of these Chinese models are also great. And I don't know where this ends up.
I think listening to your tool, this what was it called? Agent Smith on your Mac?
Agent Smith, macOS Agent Smith. Yes, might rename that, but yeah, that's what it is.
I like it. The idea of not just predicting the next token, predicting the outcome, and so you have your 3 different agents or however many different agents saying the ultimate end game, the ultimate goal is this. Is each step along the way proceeding towards that goal, or are we getting off track? Is that is it kind of the goal?
Right. Yeah. So it's supposed to try to keep it on track, keep it safe. And because basically it says, hey, the task description is your source of truth for what the user's intent is. And so we should be working towards that goal. And then there's also some other pieces in there that, you should not break laws, not do anything that's going to harm the user's data or other people's things. And so some sort of broad general things like that, because there's a section about user's intent is best expressed by the task description. There's also the user's best interest, which might not be the same as the user's intent. Okay.
Do you plan on releasing this tool to the public, or is it, or as a product, or?
So it's open source currently. So it's anyone can go download it and run it. And I I did, I think, one GitHub release like a long time ago. I was actually sort of working up to another one. I realized I had no onboarding at all, and you have to configure all these separate little agents correctly. So I was like, well, we need to make that easier. So that's what I've been working on recently, and it's almost there. So yeah, I'll do a release pretty soon, like a
nice. That sounds like a good tool, nice tool to check and double check.
Hopefully it's getting there. Like it's to the point now where I'm using it for some things and instead of only working on the tool, So I feel like that's a sign that I'm getting closer to something that's maybe okay.
Well, when you're ready to release it, or when you're ready to release a new app, I read an article by Paul Hudson. He released an app called Kickstart. He put out a nice blog post kind of associated with how to price an app. In fact, that's what it's called. It's how to price an app, the coffee test, and it's gauging the value of your product, your app that you wrote against a cup of coffee, or how much are people willing to pay. And one of the things that my daughter, who is an artist, she does commission work, and she said that if she doesn't feel bad about what she's charging people, she knows she's not charging enough, which I think is a great statement.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
There's, I think in software, especially with iOS apps, that there's kind of a race to the bottom. In fact, I'm the epitome of that, because the app I just released, which we'll talk about in a moment, is completely free. So take none of my advice, but take Paul Hudson's advice, where you talk about, or you rate your app, price your app on, is it worth 1 cup of coffee a week? Is it worth 1 cup of coffee a month? And does that feel fair? And if it does, then, well, a cup of coffee at a latte or something at a coffee shop is going to set you back $5, $6, $7 in the US, especially if you add oat milk or one flavor. I mean, coffee has gotten to be very expensive. So the article, which we'll put in the show notes here, is very good. It's probably a 7 or 8 minute read. It talks about using pricing levers. There's something called charm pricing, which is the official term for $4.99 instead of $5, and it's an actual psychological effect. Bracketing pricing, which talks about using 3 useful option. It makes the middle price easier to choose. At MIT, they had 100 MBA students choose between 3 options: an internet-only subscription, a print-only subscription, and a print and internet subscription. And when they had 3 options, most chose the print and internet, which was the most expensive option. But when you remove the middle option, more people chose the cheaper option. And I'll let you read the article to look at it, but it is pretty interesting. So I'll stop there just to move on. But
interesting. I don't have a lot of data because I don't have a lot of users, but I know in my own apps, like if I have, let's say, a monthly and a yearly subscription, for example, or a weekly, monthly, and a yearly, or whatever, like almost all of them buy the yearly every time. I don't know if that means my yearly's too cheap or my other one's too expensive, but I can't get anybody to buy anything but the yearly all the time. That's what they want.
Yearly is good because you get fewer reminders, which is fewer opportunities or fewer reminders to cancel, perhaps, not to talk about dark patterns. But and then, in fact, it talks about that in this article by Paul Hudson, where your yearly price should be about 8 months worth of subscription fees. So that seems to be maybe the magic number. I can't remember exactly the details of how he came up with that, but it does
you're
talk
saying
about
that you're like 8 months worth of your monthly fee if you did a monthly,
right?
Like that kind of thing. Okay.
Yeah. So you get a discount as buying yearly. Plus, you as the developer get that money up front, of course. So
yeah, and I always figured I kind of wanted the yearly, so I always feel like, well, okay, I can't make the weekly. If I have a weekly, I can't make it too cheap because otherwise it's just too cheap for a quick try and nothing. I'm not going to make it $1.06 or something, or 7 or 8 or even. But then the monthly, I've always thought, well, I kind of want to price that one so that people really want to buy the yearly.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's good or not, though. Is that a good goal? I don't even know.
Read the article. We'll move on. Okay, I'll definitely take a look.
Good.
But To go against that 100%, I just shipped an app on the 7th of July. I shipped my app, Relay Team Finder. It was an app that I started. I had to go back and look. I went file new project on February 14th, 2026, and released to the App Store July 7th.
Okay, so 5 months. So okay,
5 months. Yeah, 5 months to release the app, and it would have been a little sooner, but boy, app review for a new app, a 1.0, took a week and a half just to get reviewed.
Oh, wow.
Just to go into app review, it was a week and a half. Counting the weekend, which I feel like app review slows down on the weekend, but it still happens.
Maybe. I don't know.
Right?
Yeah, perception.
Perception. Yeah, I don't know. But anyway, it was a long wait. Like, wow, what is going on? And I know that App Store submissions are huge, but when I submit like a point release to an existing app that I have, it seems like they do go into review pretty quickly and get reviewed like within a day. But a new app, it was a long process. It got rejected to go back to the age thing, not because it's a social network, but what the app does is it aligns runners with relay teams for relay races. And I had an option in there, or it wasn't an option, it was a requirement to put in your age, because some relay teams might want to group people by age. They say, like, we only want runners over 40 or under 20 or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
You might have a relay team that's made up by age, because teams will do that. So I had that as a text field in the app, enter your age. Well, after waiting a week and a half for app review, it got quickly rejected because that was a requirement, and that is a privacy concern.
So what what was do you know what the actual rejection was?
It violates the...
I mean, I know you said privacy, but like what, do you know what of the App Store guidelines, where that would have
Let me just look that up.
I was just wondering, because I was thinking, well, maybe I was just wondering, like, does your team setup thing, though, also have a spot to put in minimum like age ranges or anything like that, or is that just something they could write in the text or something?
They could write it in the text, but you could on server side there's a filtering available, or there was filter by age. So the guideline that was cited was 5.1.1 legal privacy data storage, data collection and storage, and it says the app requires users to provide personal information that is not directly relevant to the app's core functionality, which you could maybe argue that, but...
Oh, no, it is actually under account sign. It says apps may not require users to enter personal information to function except when directly relevant to the core functionality of the app or required by law. So it seems like you could have made a case for...
Yeah, I suppose...
These running groups have age range limits, and so that's why we have an age thing.
Yeah,
and maybe you still could. You could maybe still come back.
You could fight that fight, or I could go down the age range. Are you this age? Are you? But I determined that it was not really that necessary, and so I just took it out. Just like, okay, never mind about age filtering, because I'm not gonna fight that battle. And quite frankly, if I can make it easier for people to sign up or to enter their information in. And the reason that this is entered in is so that other relays and teams can find runners for their team. Anyway, so that was the first rejection. But and then there was another one for. I've in-app purchases. The app is free, going against Paul Hudson's advice, because the app does require, the more users on the app, the more useful it becomes. So I just wanted the least barrier of entry. The app is free, but I do have a tip jar in there, support the app, which I don't anticipate anybody using, or maybe, one or two, that would be nice. But it does cost me $20 a month to run the server on this. But, so I had a tip jar in there.
$20 a month.
That's the Heroku.
Wow.
Like a basic. I think you can go one lower tier than that, but there's no free tier on Heroku servers, which I'm okay with. Anyway, the in-app purchase got rejected because I didn't have a restore purchases option in there, but that was a fairly easy fix. But anyway, finally launched that, and it was great to get that out. I'm actually already, as of this recording, up to 1.2. I've made some changes just from dog fooding and really seeing how the app works. And it's gotten a couple of downloads with basically no effort.
And Relay Team Finder is the name of the app?
Relay Team Finder.
You can find that online at relayteamfinder.com?
No, you can find it on the App Store, Relay Team Finder.
App Store.
I didn't make a website for it. I was trying to do a fairly, kind of just basic, get the app out there, see if there's any interest in it. I didn't register a domain. I have a privacy, policy or whatever you have to submit for that,
Right.
contact. But that's just links back to my other. It's actually the privacy policy. It's the same for the Midst, which I do have a website. But anyway,
Gotcha.
That was kind of the big news from my end of what I've been working on. Finally got Relay Team Finder out there.
Wow. Well, so that's great. Any downloads yet? I know it's early.
Yeah, a couple. I think 4.
Nice. 4. Wow.
4. Yes.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, but again, I emailed Runner's World. I emailed a writer for Runner's World. Didn't get a reply. And then just some App Store optimization keywords. But I haven't done any. I haven't done any paid ads or anything. I'm just I just wanted to get it out there, and now I'm sort of going with how to market the app. Next, really, what I need is for my wife to do another relay run, and then I do have magnets for some promos, but
pretty good looking
thanks.
Magnets.
Yes, but anyway, no, I will be doing some more promotion. I want to email some more writers in running, running magazines, running publications, and see if I can get a little article written about it. That seems to be what I hear of marketing is if you can get an article written.
Seems like that might be a thing, huh?
Oh, it's a huge thing, but boy, getting it done. I've emailed I don't know how many people about the Midst for my social network app, and nothing, just crickets. So it's tough. So maybe I'm not a good emailer, but maybe I'll keep trying.
All right. Well, do you have a book of the week to add? I know a few weeks ago you talked about Silicon Values and Invisible Rulers that I have yet to read, but they sounded interesting.
Yeah. Well, they're pretty they're pretty heady books. The book I'm reading now is Lord of the Rings, which honestly is okay. But another book that I would recommend if people are interested from the business side of running a company is Build by Tony Fadell. That is a very good book. Well written. It's an easy read. Yeah, Build by Tony Fadell. He was on the iPod team. Yeah, he was on the team with Apple with the iPod. He left to develop his own. He started the company that made the Nest thermostat, and then wrote a book called Build. Yeah, that's a very good book. Definitely recommend that one.
Okay, cool. Yeah. All right, well, we'll check it out. Thanks again. Thanks, everyone.
All right.
And we'll talk to you
next
soon.
time. Thanks, Drew. Bye-bye.
All right, bye.